Links to previous episodes are given in the video description, so don't forget to like, subscribe and share the video. Frozen Heart, Fated Soul. Synopsis. Kiara Westwood is the 18-year-old daughter of two alpha parents, yet she was born lacking one of the essential fundamental abilities of a wolf. Desiring to break free from the overwhelming protection and concern of her family and pack that stifled her, she relocates to the pack of the Lycan King himself. Alejandro Rossi. Fearless, merciless, and heartless, Alejandro has no regard for anything or anyone, and he prefers it that way. He thinks his only aim is to manage the threat that endangers their very survival. At 34, Alejandro has yet to meet his fated mate, nor has he chosen one. Sleeping with women is merely a pastime, and he lacks the passion or desire for love. That is, until Kiara enters his world like a refreshing breath or a tempest on a warm summer evening. Beneath the blood moon, through a cruel twist of fate, they discover that they are mates. Will Kiara manage to penetrate his icy heart and awaken any feelings he might hold? Or will he utterly ruin her in the process? Episode 1. 21 years ago. It was the night of my 13th birthday. A day where I should have just chilled with my friends. We were going to go down by the canyon. Have a bonfire. But something wasn't right. I could feel it. I stayed in my room telling them I wasn't feeling great. My emotions were wreaking havoc within me. As if wanting an outlet from the confines of my body. Alejandro, what's wrong? My mom's soft voice asked from outside the door. Just leave me alone, please. Fear. I felt fear, something inside me was changing. I gripped the window ledge staring up at the moon. Leave him be, he isn't worth it, my father's cold voice came. He had always hated me, I don't even know why. My heart was racing in my chest. I hated this. It was as if something was screaming to be set free. I closed my eyes, trying to calm myself. But it was no use, I could hear them all. The voices in the entire house. Why was this happening? I could hear every poisonous word that left my dad's mouth as they walked away. Ricardo, he's a child, there must be something wrong. Mom whispered to Dad as they entered their bedroom. He's a disobedient mutt. There's nothing wrong. He scoffed. Anger filled me with a fiery passion. Why did he hate me so much? My heart was thumping loudly. The moon was making me feel odd. Why did it have to be a full moon tonight? Ever since I could remember I felt restless on a full moon. Sure, I was a werewolf, but this wasn't normal, and it wasn't like I had a wolf yet. I'm not disobedient. I whispered. What did I do wrong? I always tried to live up to his standards, but I was never good enough. He's a worthless piece of trash. That one is going to die young. Trust me. His words made my blood boil. My fingernails dug into the window ledge. A growl tearing from my lips. I saw red as I turned towards the door. I was done with having to hear this. I pulled it open and stormed down the hall to my parents' room. Each antagonizing remark that left my father's lips made my anger surge. I ripped open their door, not even realizing I had taken it off the hinges. My mother screamed and Dad looked shocked. What is that? He whispered, looking at me. I glared at him, feeling agonizing pain rip through me. My bones felt like they were burning and breaking. I'm not trash. I'm not disobedient. I growled, not caring about the pain. I couldn't even recognize my voice or understand what was happening. Dad's eyes widened as he stepped back looking up at me. I frowned. Why was he looking up at me? He was taller than me. You worthless mutt! How dare you? What are you? Dad roared. He was the alpha. He always hated how his alpha command never worked on me. I knew it was that reason. The reason he always beat me when I disobeyed him. To show me that he was stronger. But why? Was that such a big deal? I am not worthless. Why do you hate me so much? I growled. I couldn't even recognize my voice. I told you he was a freak, Dad whispered, disgust and contempt clear in his voice. Anger flared within me, and I lunged at him. It felt like a nightmare. I could see what was happening, but at the same time I wasn't in control. I saw my black furry paws with long claws tear into my father. I couldn't feel anything, but at the same time I was calm. And then suddenly everything went black. When I came to, I was standing in my parents' bedroom. A once summer country room that was now a nightmare. Shredded body parts littered the room and blood. Claw marks stained every inch of the walls and floor. The strong smell of coppery blood tarnished the air. I stumbled back, horror filling me. I looked at my hands. Hands that were covered with blood. I scanned the floor. I remember attacking Dad, but what about Mum? I rushed across the room, to the other side of the upturned bed. Stopping in my tracks when I saw the hand that lay on the floor wearing a ring. Mom's ring. Mom's hand. No, how could I have attacked Mom? No. 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 My heart thundered in my chest, and I wished I could reverse time. I had done this. I had murdered my parents and I had no idea how. But one thing was clear. Dad was right. I was a freak. A freak of nature. Whatever I had turned into, wasn't normal. That was my first shift. The first time I had taken someone's life. But it was far from the last time. Kiara, the wind blew through my hair, a pleasant welcome on this warm day. The sun was lowering itself in the sky and I knew I'd have to head inside soon. I was set just outside our family home, near the river. I smiled gently, my eyes glued to the book in my hand, My Future Stepbrother by Monroe 30. I loved this book. I smiled as I turned the page as I leant back against the tree. But I didn't get to lose myself in the book and fantasize about crushing on the male lead Jace because Liam, my twin brother and future alpha of the Blood Moon Pack, ran over. Kia, join us. We're going to go watch a movie, he said, running his fingers through his hair. I looked up into his cerulean blue eyes, which mirrored Dad's. He looked a lot like Dad actually. The only difference between the two was, Liam had strawberry blonde hair like Mum's natural color. I don't want to go. You lot go. I replied, turning back to my book. He sighed and snatched it from me, making my eyes flash a brilliant purple. Liam. Kiara. Enough of this. Come on. You know Dad said that the king's coming in 2 days. Then we'll be stuck serving the arrogant. That made me smile. As an alpha, Liam didn't like to take commands from anyone, and having two alpha parents didn't help with that. The fact the king was actually coming down meant he would have another superior around. It's not funny. We've all heard he's more arrogant than Dad and every other alpha put together. Liam growled, now glaring at me. His deep navy eyes of his wolf showing through. It's a little funny. I actually want to see Dad bristle, I said cheekily. Liam narrowed his eyes. You are evil. Especially since you're Daddy's little girl. He mocked. He wasn't wrong. Everyone knew I was Dad's favorite. I was second only to Mum. I stood up and reached for my book. He held it out of my reach. Although I was 5'5", he was over 6 foot. Come out with us, he repeated stubbornly. I didn't want to. It would get dark by the time the movie finished, and then I was as blind as a bat. Although I was quite good with my senses, it wasn't the same. I hated holding everyone back, no matter how much they said I wasn't a burden. I was one. I always have been one. Kiara. I looked at him and was about to argue when Raven, my best friend, came running over. Raven was a little younger than me and still 17 years old. She had her black hair cut in a bob with bangs with red and plum streaks in it. The most unique thing about her was her mix-matched eyes. The left was an icy blue and the right was a blue-green. Did I mention she was also tiny at 4 feet 9 inches? Kia, she said, wrapping her arms around my waist and hugging me tightly. She was dressed all in black. I don't think she owned many other colors. Maybe the occasional purple or red. Ow ow! You're crushing me. I joked. All I'm crushing are these plus highs, she said, prodding me, making me blush before she let go of me and looked at Liam, who towered high above her. Liam. Raven, he replied. Their eyes met and I simply stood there. Raven has been my best friend since we were little. But there was something between Liam and her. I even think they might be mates. I can just imagine it, our tiny Luna. But then again, I think she had chemistry with someone else too. Since you're here, we were heading out and Kiara here refuses to go. We both know she listens to you, he said. Raven crossed her arms. Even you listen to me, she remarked, making Liam glare at her as he shoved the book into her arms. Don't get ahead of yourself, bit-size, he growled. Oh, I'm terrified, she mocked, making me laugh. Liam stormed off and we both started laughing. I'm not going, Raven, don't even try it, I said stubbornly, taking my book back, frowning. This was a signed copy and it meant a lot to me. Kia. Liam isn't wrong. Come on, and I'm going to be there too. We want you there. But I was also the reason Raven stuck by my side when she should be going and doing what she wants. I hated holding everyone back. I always did. Family trips. Mum and Dad couldn't even have their full time together because of me. No matter how old I got, I was still useless. Okay. I gave in. I didn't want them to beg me either, knowing this time neither was going to let me get out of it. Worse, I knew Liam would take it to Dad too. I brushed my fingers through my waist-length sandy blonde hair. Guess I had no choice. It was over an hour later and here we were at the movies. Damon Nicholson, the future beta and also Liam's best friend, was with us. The four of us have always hung together. We were now laughing over a comedy, and I was actually enjoying the movie, whilst sipping on my Fanta. We had gone into town, although our pack had grown a lot over the years, we didn't have our own cinema yet. I would have preferred horror. Raven said, tossing popcorn up and catching it in her mouth. I'm sure there's a lot you would have preferred. Damon remarked, making me laugh, taking popcorn and shoving it in Raven's mouth. She bit onto his finger, giving him a mock glare as Liam looked down at the tiny pint of our group. Zip it, boys. Raven said, releasing Damon's finger. I smiled. I told you I'm the third wheel. Or should I say the fourth wheel, I said, looking between the two men and Raven. They all stared at me, looking confused. What does that even mean? Liam asked. I shrugged. I often said things without thinking and I knew it irked them. They exchanged baffled looks and I turned back to the movie. I preferred romantic movies like the Titanic, but it was hard to choose something we'd all agree on. By the way, I love that top, Kia. Damon said teasingly. I raised an eyebrow. I knew what he wanted, an answer to what I meant. Hey, don't check her out, Liam said, yawling at me. Kia, Damon pouted. Don't Kia me. Figure it out, I said smugly. Raven was the only one to smirk as the boys frowned at me. We were halfway through the movie, when I suddenly felt the urge for fresh air. I'm stepping out, I said quietly, standing up. Instantly all three stood and I frowned. Alone? I need the bathroom anyway, Raven said. No. You don't, I said firmly. I could see the little blinks at the end of the seats. Humans couldn't really see in the dark either. Didn't they just follow the little lights? I'm taking you, Liam said firmly, taking my hand and pulling me along. From all three he was the one who dared to annoy me off. The other didn't. I didn't say anything. He led me to the door and let go of me. Mind link me when you come back here, okay? Fine, I said. I wasn't going to, why should I? I hated being treated like an invalid. I stormed off, the familiar spasm of pain up my right ankle to my knee jarring through me. Love you, Kia. Liam mind linked me. My anger faded. I knew what they did was because they loved me. Love you too, big brother. I walked to the bathroom knowing Liam was watching. Entering, I looked in the mirror. Staring back at me was a pretty young woman. I had a square face, with high-defined cheekbones, plump lips, and straight long hair. But what I loved the most about my face was my eyes. Sage green with a blue ring, a mix of mum and dad's. I gave it a few moments before I left the cinema and walked into the parking lot. My wolf was restless, she wanted me to go further out. Why? I asked her, not that I'd get a reply, but I liked to think I could communicate with her. She sometimes sent me emotions as answers. Is there something out there? I asked. The urge to keep walking filled me, and I did, the brightly lit cinema lights becoming fainter as I continued walking. My common sense told me to stop. This wasn't the first time I've done this. Growing up, I followed my impulse and always ended up in danger. But now I had my wolf, things would be different, right? Although she couldn't see in the dark, she was strong and fast. Suddenly everything went pitch black. Alarms went off signaling that there had been a power outage. My heart skipped a beat, but I was calm. I don't think this was a good idea, I said to my wolf. I looked around but everything was black. Kiara. Liam called through the link, panic laced into his voice. Relax, I'm safe, I'll just stay in one place till the lights come on. I replied through the link, okay. Raven's coming, relax Liam. He didn't reply and I knew Raven was probably rushing to the bathroom already. I sighed, guess I better head back. I turned to walk inside when I heard a strange unearthly growl. My blood ran cold when I felt something move behind me, the whisper of the wind brushing against me, spurring me into a run. Alejandro, the smell of sweat hung in the air, the sound of skin against skin and moans from the two women who lay on the bed filled the room. They kissed each other as I linked with one of them. I didn't really feel anything, even as my release rushed through me. I simply pulled out and got off the bed, taking a drag from the cigarette that was between my lips. Not even bothering to cast the two she-wolves I had just do a second glance. They won't be able to walk for a good day or two. They had fulfilled their purpose, and now I didn't want to see them again. Women were all the same to me. I was 34 and I didn't have a mate, but I'm glad. I am not mate material. I am a twisted freak of nature. I guess not being a werewolf meant I didn't get one. It's been over 10 years and I accepted that fact. It just meant I could have 100 women if I wanted, and I have had a lot more than that. And I wouldn't need to deal with a so-called soul mate. I didn't have a heart, nor did I care. There was no place in me for anyone else and that is the way I liked it. To be alone. I've seen countless men fall to their knees to please their women. I wasn't one of them. Some called it a curse that I didn't have a mate, I called it a perk. No one to do with my head, the only thing I needed was and I got plenty of that. I walked into the bathroom to wash their filth off me. I didn't bother turning the light on. What's the point when I could see in the dark? I frowned, stepping into the shower after tossing the cigarette into the bin. Turning the faucet on, I let the cold water pour over me. I didn't feel anything. Not the cold, not the pleasure. It was all the same. Years had passed and with each one, I felt more animal than human. The only thing that made me feel alive was pain and killing. I loved the chase, the play, and the kill. I made it my sole purpose was to clear the world of trash. I soaped my body and was rinsing off when I felt someone mind-linking me. Alpha. We've got a location. Darien, my second in command, my beta, was an alpha but had refused his position to be by my side. Probably the closest thing I had to a friend. Where? I linked back. Heading towards Birmingham. If we leave soon, we might be able to get it. Be ready in 10. I cut the link and grabbed a towel. A humorless smirk on my face. That was near the Elijah's pack. The temptation to impose on him felt like some entertainment. The man was on my council, but we hated each other's guts. He was only 6 years older than me, but he was one of those I loved to annoy off. I was meant to visit him tomorrow. I think I'd move that up. Darien, yeah, Alpha. Let Alpha Elijah know, we're coming tonight instead of tomorrow. They can host us. I left the bathroom and walked over to the bed to grab my phone. One of the she-wolves stirred and sat up holding her sheets to her chest. Alpha. I ignored her, grabbed my phone and left the room. I hadn't been to Elijah's pack location although he came for pack meetings often. So, it would actually be a fair visit to see how he runs his pack. I had to admit, he had the strongest pack around. Mine didn't count because I took members from different packs. It was more a pack of warriors than a family. We had strong wolves who would deal with threats and were sent out. I was settled not too far from my brother's pack. But not too close for the packs to mix. I had territories all over and I moved around if needed. It had been 8 years since I attained this position. By force in many cases, I forced the alphas to submit, and I claimed my position and exercised my authority upon them. I wasn't an ordinary werewolf, and I wasn't going to be treated like one. I entered my bedroom picking out some oversized shorts. They were baggy enough and wouldn't rip when I transformed. After all, I wasn't your ordinary werewolf. I was a Lycan. Stronger, better, smarter, and I expected everyone to know that. A Lycan was like royalty, and so I took my throne in a way. But whether they admit it or not, every pack is safer with my reign over them. Innocent wolves don't get abused. If they do, they know I'm here. I was the alpha of the Night Walker's pack. Also known as the Royal Pack. With time, more and more disturbing happenings have occurred, but I've done my best to contain the threat. Not only were rogues working in packs, but beasts called Wendigos had appeared. Wendigos were werewolves who had eaten werewolves and become something different. They lived to kill and eat werewolves and had no trace of sanity left. And then there was the Manangles, vampire-like creatures with elongated limbs, long claws, teeth and surrounded by a revolting smell. They preyed on children and pregnant women. The worst thing was these things were made with dark magic. And although I had been working on tracking these things for over 16 years, I was still grasping at straws. Just the thought made my blood boil. Whoever was behind it was smart. Smarter than I anticipated, but I swear when I find them, I'm going to make them wish they were never born. The 4 men who were to join me were ready. I shifted. The seconds of pain as my bones snapped and reshaped felt refreshing. I cricked my neck side to side and without a word we began running. I was faster than the other 3, but they knew where we were headed. I hadn't seen one of these creatures in a few months, something that had unsettled me. Was something bigger to come? It was just my gut instinct, but I'm not usually wrong. But now that one had been traveling south, I had had it tracked and like always it won't get away from me. I wanted to try to get one alive, but I always ended up tearing them apart. The moon shone and as always, I felt more powerful under it. My eyes blazed as I sped up, a black blur as I ran towards my prey. 2 hours had passed, I had crossed by Birmingham. I was most probably somewhere near the Blood Moon Pack. I had picked up a scent, it was a Wendigo. Which meant a lot of people were in danger, not just kids and pregnant women. I had entered a town, and I frowned. Didn't they usually stick to the woods? I looked around realizing I was in Stratford-upon-Avon. Something wasn't right. I shifted back, tightening the string on my baggy shorts. The night was cool, the wind was calm, so catching a scent wasn't too hard. But it still managed to evade me. That was odd. Did it have a target? Where was it? I stuck to the shadows, there were too many people around. This wasn't good. I needed to do something, so we weren't seen. I looked up at the electricity wires, my eyes flashing red. A cold smirk crossed my lips. Now, this was going to be fun. If it wanted to play hide and seek, I'd give it what it wanted. I jumped up, ripping through the electricity wires with my claws. Sparks flew, illuminating the sky before the entire area went black. I heard a low whistling growl in the distance and I smirked coldly. Game on! Kiara! I shifted mid-run, feeling the thing behind me run faster. It wasn't a rogue, I knew that much. I couldn't see where I was going, but I kept running. My ankle screamed at me in protest, and I stumbled a few times. Although my mind screamed at me to turn and look at what was chasing me, a basic instinct. One which was of no use to me, I wouldn't be able to see. I hit a wall and growled, turning. I knew I had to fight, or I was done for. I lashed out, but I was knocked to the ground. I could hear it approaching as I got up once again. I felt it sniffing me and I tensed. Did it not want to kill me? I was wrong. The next thing I felt was something bite into my neck, making me howl in pain. The wound stung and I felt my body force itself to shift. My shoulder was aching painfully. A loud growl ripped through the air, and I felt something push my attacker off me. I couldn't see, but I could hear a fight going on. Biting, growling, and the sounds of bones breaking. The smell of blood filled the air and then silence. I tried to sit up, but my neck and shoulder were burning up. Liam, I called through the link weakly. I couldn't say anything as I felt exhausted. I heard footsteps and I crossed my arms over my chest, wishing I could see. An intoxicating woody scent filled my nose, laced with male musk and smoke. Eat my lips. Something about it was extremely pleasant. Who are you? I asked, my voice calm and in control despite the pain I was feeling. Someone who saved you, pup, came the most delicious voice I had ever heard. My heart skipped a beat at the rugged tone that seemed to make my skin hum. Kia. I hear Raven's voice and the sound of running. Before I could say anything, I felt the man leave and I wished he hadn't. Oi! What the? Damon said. Kia. Liam said, and I felt him pulling his shirt over me before scooping me into his arms. She's injured. Oh God! Raven said, sounding panicked. I'm fine, I said, sounding weaker than I wanted. What was that? Raven asked as I felt myself being placed in the car. Raven got in next to me, pulling me into her arms. Something chased me, and someone saved me, I said quietly. The thought of the deep voice making my stomach flip. Well, whoever he was fast. He grabbed that thing and vanished. Damon said. The car fell silent as we drove home. I knew Dad was going to flip and I didn't want him knowing what happened. I stared out at the passing streetlights. It seemed only the cinema area had been affected. Get me to my bedroom, Liam. Do not tell Mum or Dad about this. Please. I said weakly. We need you checked. Liam said curtly. I'm warning you, Liam, just listen to me. I snapped. She's kinda right, Uncle L will cut your balls off, Raven said. The two young men exchanged looks and nodded, sighing. We all knew that was true. But you need to clean that wound. Damon added. I'll do it for her and stay the night with her. If she gets a fever or anything, I'll let you guys know. You can't even mind Link? Liam remarked. Raven leant forward, flicking the back of his neck. I can come to your room. You don't live across the Packlands, do you, dunce? Okay, chill out, bit-size. I sighed, leaning back and closed my eyes, ignoring their banter. Tonight had ended unexpectedly, and once again, I had to be saved. I was finally in the comfort of my room. Relieved that Mum and Dad were in their room. They definitely weren't asleep. We all knew that. The two were the most in-love couple I have ever seen, and their drives were something else. Thank God for soundproof walls. The walls to my room were textured dusky pink paint with a sparkle of shimmer in it. The wooden floor was covered with a plush pink rug, and my bed and furniture were grey. Whilst my bedding was grey and white patterned print, there was a floor-length window that was covered in white and pink organza curtains. A book corner, containing rows of books, diaries, and my candle collection, was on the left of the door. On the floor in front of the shelves were several cushions, where I would usually sit to read or write. On the wall opposite to the bed were my wardrobes, and set in the middle was my vanity table with a mirror. I had 2 floor lamps and a glitter lamp. Around my headboard and curtains there were strings of fairy lights. This was my haven, a place I didn't need anyone's help. Where I felt capable and where I wasn't constantly fussed over. I was currently sitting there in Liam's shirt as Raven dabbed antiseptic on my shoulder. We should have got Liam to LCK it, you know alpha saliva helps. You gross, that's more intimate. He can LCK you, but he isn't touching me. I retorted in disgust. Oh, come on. I'm sure he wouldn't have minded. I know he wouldn't, but no thank you. I was relieved when she placed plasters on all the gaping marks where I was bitten and let me relax back. It doesn't look like a wolf's bite, she said, now serious. I don't think it was. It didn't sound like one. I said, shuddering slightly. Who saved you? Any idea? I don't know, but he wasn't from this pack. I said quietly, remembering his smell and the way his voice sounded. Your heart's racing, Raven said, looking at me curiously. I looked at her. I didn't have any secrets from her. We both told each other everything. His voice was, I said, dropping back onto my bed. Raven's eyes widened as she got onto the bed on her knees, staring at me, wide-eyed. Whoa, really? Like panty-dropping charming? She asked. I raised an eyebrow. More like charming. Is that even a term? She gasped. I wish. She stopped, a flicker of guilt crossing her face. I knew what she was going to say. Don't. I wish I saw him too, if his voice and scent had anything to it. He would be pretty hot. I said, staring at my ceiling. The light from my glitter lamp casting sparkly patterns on it. What did he say? He said he's the one who saved me, I said, pouting, remembering his words. She lay next to me, placing her arm over my waist. Now thinking of it, he called me a pup. Humph. I turned to my side, unhappy with that. Raven laughed. Well, I'm sure if you gave him a little show rather than try covering yourself, he'd realize you weren't just a pup. Raven. Go to sleep. I groaned. All right, she said from behind me, and I knew she'd be out like a light. I turned off the other lamps from the switch near my bed, staring at the silver glitter that swam in the pink water. Raven's breathing became rhythmic and sure enough, she was fast asleep rather quickly. But I couldn't sleep, the same thoughts consuming my mind. Who was he and why was he in our territory? Kiara, someone who saved you, pup. His deep voice sent shivers up my spine. His scent filled my senses. What's your name? I asked softly, feeling the heat from his body sent shivers of pleasure up my spine. Kiara. Hey. That's my name, Kiara. Kiara. I frowned. The voice changed to one I recognized rather well. My eyes flew open to see Raven hovering over me. I blushed, realizing I had been dreaming. Pushing her back, I sat up. The sun was shining through the curtains and I leaned over, turning my lights off. What were you dreaming about? Raven asked, curiously staring at me. Nothing, why? Your heart was racing. I shrugged innocently. No idea. I stretched, wincing at the spasming pain that shot up my shoulder and neck. I groaned as I clamped my hand over it. Raven was by my side instantly. Are you not healed? She asked worriedly. We may have to tell Auntie Red and Uncle El. Not a good idea. I said, standing up. I tried not to flinch at the pain in my ankle. It was always stiffer in the morning. I limped slightly as I made my way to the bathroom. I'll use Liam's shower, he's already left for training. Raven said. I nodded as I walked into my small bathroom. It wasn't big, but it did have a tub with a shower combined. I pulled Liam's shirt off and looked in the floor-length mirror. My usual tan skin that was like Dad's, was a little paler than usual. Taking a moment to admire my underboob intricate chandelier tattoo. I had gotten it a day after my 18th birthday, and I loved it. Dad had been a bit fussy, saying why did I get something that would draw attention. He sure would have a heart attack if he saw my thigh tattoo that looked like a garter belt. I got that just over a week ago. He has yet to notice. I peeled the bandages off and looked at the bite mark. It was healing, albeit slower than normal. Feeling a little relieved, I stepped into the shower, letting the warm water ease my achy shoulder. An hour later, Raven and I headed downstairs. We had ended up having a pillow fight before we got dressed for the day. I wore a silk ivory cami tucked into ripped denim skinny jeans and ivory flats. I donned a cardigan over the cami to hide my shoulder. Although the bleeding had stopped, the wounds were still there. I did love heels, but I couldn't really wear them for long without my foot playing up. My hair was left open, and I just had my usual touch of tinted moisturizer, highlighter, and smoky eyeliner and mascara. My lips were just coated with a tint of shea butter L.P. balm. I wore small dangle earrings and a few necklaces. We walked into the kitchen, both Raven and I stopping in our tracks. Dad had Mom up against the fridge, her legs wrapped around him as they made out, the sound of M0ANS clear as day. I blushed and Raven whistled. Nice show, Uncle L. Keep going. I heard Dad growl as Mom unlocked her legs and pushed him away, blushing lightly. I swear that only Dad can make Mum blush. I smiled and looked at my parents. Dad was 40 and Mum was 37. They were young parents, but they looked like they were 30 at the most. I would, but I think you're way too innocent to be able to handle it," Dad said to Raven, who rolled her eyes. "Not true. I'm not innocent." "You think that?" Dad said, smirking, as he leaned against the worktop. "You okay, Angel?" He looked over at me and I smiled shrewdly. Dad would always greet me with a kiss. But the fact that he wasn't moving from his place meant he was turned on. "I am, Dad. Not going to give me a hug?" I asked slyly. Dad smirked, pulling Mom back into his arms and kissing her. "You sure you want one?" "Yuck, no," I said, not trusting Dad. Mum rolled her eyes. "You girls okay? I heard something went down at the cinema yesterday. Liam said you lot had headed home before then. Is that true?" she asked sharply. Me and Raven exchanged looks. I nodded, not meeting Mum's eyes as I pulled open the fridge, taking out a bottle of orange juice. "Yep, Auntie Red. That is what happened. So what's the plan for the king's visit?" "It's tomorrow, isn't it?" Raven asked smoothly as Gwen the Omega, who was our housekeeper, entered with an empty tray. "Breakfast is set," she said smiling. "Thanks," Mum said to her as Dad looked at Raven. "He's coming today. In fact, he's in town already," Dad replied, frowning. "Oh, I can't wait. I heard he's really handsome," Raven said. "He's a little thing," Dad growled, earning himself a glare from Mum. "Elijah, language. When two similar people meet, they clash," she said to Raven as we all headed to the dining room. Dad put his arm around me, kissing my forehead. "You look beautiful, Angel," he said. I smiled at him. He never forgot to tell me that. Sometimes I feel like no one can love me more than Dad loves me, but then I see how he looks at Mum and I wish that I would find a mate who looks at me with that much adoration and love. But would my mate want me? The mere thought made my gut twist. Once we were seated around the dining table, which was a nice, large solid wood oak table. I looked at the food. It was currently laden with two huge platters of everything you would expect in a full English breakfast. "So will the Alpha King have dinner here? Or you going to the pack house?" I asked, helping myself to food. "Here, he doesn't really like people," Mum said, making Dad raise an eyebrow. "I don't think people like him either." Raven and I laughed whilst Mum frowned at Dad. "Seriously, Elijah? He is the alpha of alphas. That is what Dad hates," I chimed in. "Ah yes, ego issues," Mum said, smirking. "Can I help cook?" I asked. Dad frowned. "You don't need to serve him. Gwen can handle it. If she wants, let her," Mum retorted, giving Dad a kiss on the neck to soothe his growing annoyance. Mum sure knew how to appease her man. "Her cooking is really good, Uncle L, you got to admit that," Raven added, eating a bacon strip. "Yeah, I know that. I just don't want her to waste time and working herself out over him." I knew he meant my ankle. "I'll be fine, Dad." I never really told them the extent of the pain as an adult. They don't really know it hurts daily. It came to a point where I started saying it hurt less and less. A lie I learned to live with. I was hurt in a rogue attack when I was around 2 years old, and it eats Dad up that he wasn't able to protect me. Although he saved me from getting killed, I was injured beyond the point of healing. I think it'll be nice. I mean, he saved her life once. Mum said, bringing me out of my thoughts. Dad's smile vanished and Raven and I looked at her in shock. Really? I asked. Spill. Raven added. You were almost 5, we were at Rayhana's 2nd birthday. You wandered off into the forest, and well, it was one of those creatures. A Manangle. It's how we found out he was a Lycan. He saved you that night, and as much as your dad can't stand him, I always remember he saved our little girl. She's bigger than you are now. Raven added to my shorter mum. Still my baby girl. Mum shot back, frowning at Raven and Dad. Now if Kiara wants to cook, she can. Alejandro, well, I think he has more secrets and reasons for the way he is. Rather than just assuming he's a jerk. What makes you say that? Raven asked, playing with her food. I was different once. Bullied, disliked, and made a target, even after I had Kiara and Liam. Several times people have wanted to kidnap an alpha female like I was an experiment. And Alejandro, he's more different than I am. Mum said, sipping her water. I nodded. That made sense. I knew how it felt to be different. It must be hard to be one of a kind. I said softly. Don't sympathize with him. Dad said. I gave him a small smile. Okay, Dad. So, is there a specific menu or can I just make whatever I want on the side? Do whatever you like. Mum said, giving me a warm smile. So skipping training today? Just today? I said guiltily. Mum trained me with a weapon, although Dad didn't want her to. She refused to let me just be weak, and I was glad. I just wish I could carry my weapon around. But it wasn't easy when it was a 5-foot-long staff with a sharp long spike at the end. Just today? Great. I'm off to ask Gwen if everything I need is in the house. I said, standing up and rushing from the room. Wincing as my legs spasmed. I grabbed the door frame just as someone rushed over. I knew from the scent it was Dad. He steadied me and I looked up at him. I'm okay, Dad. I said softly, cupping his face for a moment. Take it slow, Kiara. He said, stroking my hair. I felt a wave of sadness and nodded, as if sensing how I felt. He pulled me into his arms. I closed my eyes, hugging him tightly. Ah, she's such a daddy's girl. My dad just threatens to beat me with his slipper. Raven said, making Mum laugh. He did the same to Angela when she was younger. She replied. I smiled. Angela was Mum's best friend and also Raven's aunt. Auntie A is tough. I don't blame Dad. But look at me. I'm an innocent little devil. No devil is innocent. Mum replied, amused. I moved away from my dad. I'm okay, Dad. I promise I'll be careful. I said through the link. Before I left the room, I knew his eyes were fixed on me. Now to get cooking for the Alpha King. Alejandro, I looked out at the river. I was just outside of Blood Moon Pack territory. Although I had sent the message, I was coming, I couldn't bring myself to enter that pack. The young woman I saved last night flashed through my mind. I was sure she was from that pack. There was something about her. For one, she wasn't looking at me when she asked who I was. The second was that I hadn't been able to get her voice out of my head. It was slightly husky yet. She was young. I could tell that much from how perfect her skin was. She had her legs crossed, hiding her lower regions, and her arms and hair covered her chest. For someone who had just been attacked, she still seemed to have cared about her modesty. I've seen more women than I can remember. One more was nothing to it. That was a lie. I had been tempted to pull her arms back, to see what she was hiding from me, and it was that very thought that had put me in a real mood. Sure, I could go find her and I'm sure she'd be willing to spread those legs of hers. But the fact that I had taken an instant interest. I wish I had taken a proper look at her face. Having gotten more distracted by her body. She smelt divine too. Like hazelnut chocolate. If there was one human weakness I had, it was hazelnut chocolate. Why did the woman had to smell like the one thing I would say I liked? I picked up a pebble and threw it into the water. A deep frown on my face. Her wolf had been a brilliant white. It was too fast to see it all, but from what I did see, there was no other color on her. There was only one other light wolf I knew of, and that was Scarlet Westwood. The alpha female of this very pack. Alpha, shall we get going? It's almost evening and we are to dine with the alphas. One of my warriors, Dustin, said. Let's go. I stood up, pulling out a fresh cigarette. I was dressed in a black t-shirt, a leather jacket and black jeans. Paired with black boots, I was done. I didn't really taff about my reputation or trying to keep up an image. We headed back to our cars, and I got into my Lamborghini. How long are we staying, Alpha? Dustin asked before I shut the door. About a week. That thing was too close to their pack and it is not the first time they've headed in this direction. I frowned. It hadn't gone for the kill when it attacked that woman. Why? 20 minutes later, we were driving through pack grounds, slowing down at the open gates to the Alpha Mansion. It was actually in a woodier area than I would have expected. Trees lined the narrow road. Only one car could travel down it at a time. We drove past a few warriors who were standing there, and just as I parked up outside the medium-sized mansion, I saw Elijah and Scarlet step out of the mansion. I got out of my car and walked over to them. Alejandro, Elijah said, holding his hand out. I knew he didn't like me. I gave a humorless smirk. Elijah, I replied, giving his hand a bone-crushing handshake, one he returned with equal passion. Scarlet rolled her eyes and broke our handshake. It's nice to finally have you visit. She said, how's Maria and Raphael? Not seen them in months. I replied moodily. I hated small talk. She greeted the 3 warriors who had come with me, Dustin, Travis, and Jack. She seemed to have mind-linked someone and an Omega came for my bag. The other 3 would be staying elsewhere. And how long are you staying? She asked, leading me inside. A week or so. There are a few things I need to figure out. Which means it's not good news. Elijah frowned. Well, you're welcome for as long as you need. Scarlet remarked. The smell of delicious cooking filled the air and I had to admit I didn't mind it at all. But it was then, laced in with the food, that I smelt it. That same intoxicating smell of hazelnut chocolate, but better. I frowned deeply as I glanced towards the stairs. The smell was stronger from that area. Alejandro! Scarlett called, watching me with a small sharp frown as I stared at the stairs. I gave her a cold glare and followed her into the dining room. The table was already set with food for 8. Liam, our son. She introduced Liam was definitely a younger version of Elijah. He had grown a lot just like Rayhan. We shook hands and I could tell he was sizing me up. I last remembered him when he was a kid. Him and his sister. My thoughts vanished when that same scent hit me hard and I turned to the door. My eyes flashed red when I heard footsteps. And then in walked the young woman from last night. I swallowed as our eyes met. Now, under the brightly lit lights, sage green with a startling blue ring. Her plump lips were slightly parted. A few strands of her hair fell in front of her face. My eyes ran over her, taking in the long blue maxi dress with purple flowers that hugged her upper body. Who had just turned 18, she was rather fine. I frowned, my anger growing at the very thought. I could hear her racing heart. Her grip on the tray she held trembled. I reminded myself that she was literally half my age. Elijah growled and I didn't really blame him for once, I was literally staring at his daughter. Our daughter Kiara. Remember her? No, actually. But I remember her from last night. I remarked, taking a seat at the table without an invitation last night. Scarlett asked as everyone took a seat. To my annoyance, Kiara sat opposite me, her irritating scent filling my nose. She glanced at her twins. They both looked nervous. I raised an eyebrow. Your daughter was bitten by a manangle last night. Or did you not know? I asked Elijah mockingly, earning myself a glare from the girl opposite. Is that true? Elijah asked, his eyes flashing. Dad, I'm fine. Her voice sent pleasant hums through my body. I wondered if it was really so bad to have a little fun before I left. I mean, if Elijah found out he'd be annoyed, but I didn't really give a tone. It was his daughter who was tempting me. I didn't really go for girls that age. So why now? You were bitten? I asked you both about last night. Scarlett's icy voice came, now walking over to Kiara and tugging her small cardigan off her shoulders, growling when she saw the wound that was almost healed on her smooth tan skin. You could have died. Elijah said, turning his gaze on his son. You were supposed to take care of her. We'll do this later. Scarlett said curtly. I raised an eyebrow. Don't mind me, carry on. I said, helping myself to some food. I saw Kiara glare at me, and I raised an eyebrow. It was kind of intriguing that she wasn't scared of me. Even if women wanted me, they were still scared of me. I'm fine. Can we just eat, please? She said, tearing her gaze away from me. Fine. Scarlett said, sitting down next to Elijah, she gave him a kiss. Family drama. This is why I love being alone. Dinner was over and my men went off to the pack house where they would be staying. The tension between the Westwoods was strong. Even though Elijah tried to make small talk about work, the Manan gals, and Wendigos, I knew he was seething. His eyes kept flickering from cerulean to cobalt, and if his mate didn't have a hold on him, I'm sure he would have lunged at his son. "This is your room. I hope you have a pleasant stay," Liam said curtly. I knew he was going to hear it from his dad. I replied, walking into the room. My stuff had already been bought up. I took off my jacket, pulling off my shirt, and decided to go shower. I could hear the family arguing downstairs. No matter how quiet they tried to be, no one really realized how good my hearing was. 20 minutes later, I stepped out of the bathroom, wrapping a towel around my waist. I walked over to the bedside table to plug my phone in when the door burst open to reveal a flustered and pretty annoyed off Kiara. Her glare turned to shock when her eyes fell on my body. Kiara dad was blowing things way out of proportion, blaming Liam for something that wasn't even his fault. We were in the family lounge, although we were keeping our voices low. Everyone was tense. "All right, I get it. I'm sorry," Liam said, closing his eyes, trying to be the calmer one. "Dad, enough," I said, frustrated. Mum frowned, placing a hand on Dad's chest. She was angry we had lied, but what did they expect? They always blamed Liam and I hated it. "Elijah. Enough. She's okay and you need to stop thinking she's a baby." I gave Mum an appreciative smile. If anyone understood, it was her. I just wished the others did too. I hated that Liam already blamed himself and now Dad was only making matters worse. "I get it, I messed up. I should have stayed with her until she came out of the bathroom," Liam said, frowning. I shook my head. "No. Dad. Liam. I left the cinema of my own will. If I just returned to the screening room, I would have been fine." "Liam, stop flipping blaming yourself," I snapped. Both men looked at me, frowning. "You shouldn't have left," Dad said, now looking at me. I wasn't wearing my cardigan now since everyone had already seen the bite, and I saw his eyes flicker there before concern and worry settled in tenfold. I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath. "I don't need you to keep looking out for me, I need to breathe. Goddess, I feel suffocated at times," I snapped. I know I sounded like a selfish right now, when all they did was love me, but it was suffocating. "Kiara, you almost got killed again." "Dad. Please, I don't want to hurt you guys, but you need to let me breathe," I whispered, looking at my brother and Dad pleadingly. Mum sighed. "Elijah, Liam, you two do need to give her space. Especially you, Elijah. Red. She almost died, this is what? The 7th time. She's had enough near-death experiences for her entire life. I am not going to lose her, nor do I need that to think I owe him anything." Dad hissed, his eyes flashing. His alpha aura rolled off him. It affected me the most. The other two were alphas after all. "So, this is about the alpha upstairs?" I asked angrily, trying not to let his aura bother me too much. "No. But he's saved you twice now. I feel like I can't protect you. I don't want to suffocate you, Kia, but you're not making matters better. From now on, you are not going anywhere alone." His tone held a cold finality. I could see the anger swirling in his eyes. It was emanating from him in waves. I clenched my jaw, my own heart thundering. So this was the dangerously handsome alpha's fault. I turned and stormed out, running up the stairs. Kiara! Dad called. Give her space. Are you two not hearing anything she just said? I heard Mum's annoyed reply. Goddess, I loved the woman. I was about to storm to my room when I stopped outside the room next door to mine. The intoxicating woody scent hit my senses and I paused. Without thinking, I pushed open the door. If he hadn't told Dad, then this wouldn't have happened. I glared at the man who stood near the bed, but it only lasted a second. My eyes widened in shock when my eyes ran over him. Never had a man looked so handsome as the one before me. Every ridge and dip of his muscular body was beyond perfection. Tattoos covered his arms, chest, and his entire neck. I had seen those downstairs peeping out. He wore a few silver necklaces around his neck, which only added to how he looked. Yes, I had thought he was handsome then. But now in nothing but a towel that was precariously low on his H.P.S., showing off more tattoos that made me wonder where exactly they stopped. His legs had tattoos too. Are you done staring? He asked. His deep, cold voice making my eyes widen and I felt my cheeks flush slightly. He plugged his phone into the charger before walking over to me. Even his walk oozed power and arrogance. What do you want? I didn't think you'd be so quick to come running. I frowned. What did that even mean? I got my answer when he shut the door behind me. My eyes widened and I glared at him. Don't get ideas. I'm 18, aren't you like Dad's age? I said, stepping back. I hope he couldn't hear my racing heart. He raised an eyebrow. Oh yeah, I forgot. Daddy's little girl is still a baby, right? He mocked. That's not true. My eyes flashed in annoyance. How dare he? I don't care if he was the Alpha King. His eyes narrowed, flashing a dangerous red as he closed the gap between us. I stepped back. Prove it. He said in a lower voice, that sent shivers down my spine. Excuse me. Prove you're not Daddy's precious little baby. His eyes bore into mine and I felt like swearing when my back hit the wall. He placed his hands on either side of my head and I knew he could hear the thudding of my heart. My stomach knotted and I found myself looking at his lips. He had a styled short beard and he looked incredibly appealing. I dragged my eyes up and stared into his. I have nothing to prove to you. You shouldn't have made a big deal about it over dinner. I didn't. I just stated a fact. If that caused an issue, I don't care. So, don't annoy me off. You'll learn that my instincts to kill are far stronger than my instincts to protect. His voice was low, his dark eyes glaring into mine. My heart hammered, but I wasn't scared. I had faced death many times. I gave a small smile, trying not to focus on the fact that he was only in a towel. Was it strange that I found someone who was at least years older than me? That's all right, you saved me 14 years ago. If you kill me, it wouldn't really matter. I'm alive because of you. I said quietly, I wasn't scared of death. He frowned, looking into my eyes. I couldn't read him, but his closeness was getting to me. Humph. Seems I was right. I should have let you die. You're too weak to survive in this world. He murmured. A flash of pain and anger flitted through me. I shoved him back using all my strength. My eyes flashed purple, but he didn't even budge an inch. He growled lowly and I gasped as I was suddenly pulled from the wall and, before I knew it, slammed onto the bed. My eyes widening at the speed that he had just moved. One of his hands wrapped around my throat before I could even process what had occurred. He had one knee between my legs as I stared up into his blazing red orbs that were filled with a smoldering rage. Those glowing orbs, I remembered from a memory long ago. I could feel the weight of his anger and alpha aura. It was different from Dad's. Darker, stronger, and so deep I felt like I was drowning. I will not tolerate disrespect, he said venomously. Then don't manhandle me. I shot back, my voice a little breathless. I wasn't scared, but something about this entire thing was making my stomach crazy with butterflies. I felt his fingers tighten around my throat and I could tell he was fighting with himself. My chest rose and fell as I swallowed deeply. I was trying not to notice that he was still in a towel. His scent had already invaded my senses, but what confused me the most was the way his touch made me feel. I was aware of every calloused tip, the heart of it and the way it wrapped around my neck with ease. Then you better start showing me some respect. He said it dangerously. I smiled slightly, placing my hands on his chest, now noticing him as my finger pad brushed over him by accident. The words left my lips before I could stop them. Or what? Oh, goddess, why did I say that? My heart skipped a beat when I saw his frown deepen, his glowing red eyes now looking straight into mine. Alejandro or what? Her words surprised me, but I didn't let it show. Right now controlling my instincts was proving really hard. She lay there on the bed, not even an ounce of fear came from her. That shocked me more than anything. She knew I was stronger, she wasn't dumb. I narrowed my eyes at her remark. You don't want me to show you what? I said coldly. Maybe I do. She challenged, trying to push me off. Her words were tempting me and I was ready to show her exactly what, when suddenly she pinched me hard. I raised an eyebrow, even when her nail had dug into the piercing I didn't even flinch. Her soft fingers sent a delicious sizzle of pleasure through me. Letting go of her neck, I now pinned both of her arms to the bed on either side of head. That won't work. Are you really going to resort to such petty tricks? Then get off me. She snapped. What kind of king are you? One who bullies his subjects. You're the one who came into my room. The one who shoved me and pinched me. Aren't you the one who's disrespecting your king? I said, now looking at her hand. Her fingertip still held my blood. I frowned and brought her hand to my mouth, placing her fingertip in my mouth. My eyes didn't leave hers as I licked the blood slowly. Her heart rate spiked, but it wasn't what I was looking for. Her chest rose and fell, but I only smirked in victory when the scent of her intoxicating arousal hit me. I leant closer, my chest now brushing hers. Or was this your way of seducing me? 'Cause it didn't really work. I taunted. A lie. It was taking my all to not tear her clothes off. Something told me she might even let me. She glared at me, her eyes flashing that dazzling purple. You can carry on wishing. she said despite the flush on her cheeks. I raised my eyebrow. Oh yeah. Pinning her wrists with one hand above her head, I reached down with the other and I slipped it under her dress. Her heart hammered as she wriggled under my hold. What are you? She gasped when my fingers ran up her thigh. It felt good. I focused on what my aim was, trying not to get turned on. My hands reached her panties and I smirked, letting 2 fingers run over the soaking center of them. I could feel her smooth lips behind the tiny lace panties she wore. A very quiet M0an escaped her, but I kept my gaze steady, letting my fingers run over the damp patch on her underwear agonizingly slowly. She had stilled, her breath hitching despite how I was touching her intimately. I removed my hand from under her dress and slipped my 2 fingers into her mouth. I leaned closer, ignoring how good her mouth felt around my fingers. I could hear her shaky breath, her thumping heart, and the way my necklaces brushed the valley of her. Her delicious-smelling hair tickled my cheek as I whispered into her ear. Seems like you're turned on. Maybe you were right. Daddy's little girl isn't a baby, she seems to be more of a slut. I felt her stiffen. Removing my fingers from her mouth, I let go of her and got off the bed. That's how you play. She sat up as if she had suddenly realized where she was. I knew I had given her a mental slap to the face with that remark. I'm not a slut, she said quietly, standing up. She looked confused and I didn't really care. I walked over to my jacket and took out a cigarette. Flicking the lighter on, I lit it, watching as she rushed to the door. I didn't miss the slight falter to her right ankle at one point. Oh, one more thing, I remarked. She froze, her hand on the door handle. I won't tolerate disrespect from anyone. I don't care if you're Elijah's daughter. Cross me one more time and I won't let it slide. My voice was cold and threatening. I knew my warning had reached her loud and clear. She turned and glanced at me, those large eyes holding an emotion I couldn't quite make out. Not that I cared. She opened the door, not replying. When the door shut, I walked over to it and locked it. Now the room smelt of her. How had she even gotten so close? I frowned. She was bad news. Getting dressed, I decided to go find Elijah. I came for business and I wasn't planning on wasting time. I made my way out of my room and headed downstairs. I could hear everything despite the soundproof walls. Someone was pacing in their room and Liam was on his phone talking. Elijah, I need to talk to you, I said through the link. As a Lycan, I had the ability to link alphas if they were close. Although they couldn't reply. I walked out the front door, leaving it open behind Annie, hoping that he would show up. It wasn't long before the man stepped out, a frown on his face. What is it? He asked. I need to discuss a few concerns about the attacks. If Scarlet wants to join, she can. He frowned and nodded. Let's head to my office, he said curtly. I followed him in and he motioned for me to take a seat. I refused. Instead, I leaned against the wall, taking a long drag of my cigarette. There's a problem, isn't there? Or you wouldn't have come personally. He was smart, I'd give him that. Maybe. I now walked over to the desk. I took out a folded A3 sheet from my pocket and opened it up. It was a map of England, marking every Wendigo or Manangle attack we had faced over the last decade or more. Blue are Wendigos and the red are Manangle. At the locations, I killed them. Elijah looked at the map, his frown deepening. I knew he saw what my concern was. What they? He trailed off just as the door opened and Scarlet walked in holding a tray of hot drinks and some leftover dessert from dinner. She placed it down on the desk and looked at the map. "What is this?" she asked. Glancing at me, she paused. "You smell of Kiara. Did she say something to you?" Elijah looked up sharply, but I didn't even bat an eyelid. "Blamed me for your petty little family issue." I mocked my eyes on the map. I glanced up at them coldly. I warned her to watch her mouth and know her place. I looked into Elijah's blazing blue eyes. Scarlet sighed. "She's headstrong but doesn't blame her. Elijah and Liam need to give her space." "I'm not interested," I remarked, motioning at the map with my cigarette. "Do you see a pattern?" Scarlet, who had pursed her lips at my last comment, gave me a glare before looking at the map. The silence in the room felt loud, everyone looking at the large cluster of red and blue dots. "They're all around our area." Elijah was the first to break it. "Yet, depending on where I intercepted them, there's only one hot spot they all seem attracted to. Your pack." "Kiara," I shut my door, my heart pounding. What was that? I felt humiliated and mocked. Why had I even let him touch me? A sting of pain jolted through me. I had made a complete fool of myself, and I had to face him for an entire week. What would Dad think if he ever found out? The feel of his fingers down below lingered. I closed my eyes, sliding down the door until I was sitting on the floor. Only my fairy lights were on, all I could see was black and the little glowing drops of light. I felt utterly confused. Sure, I have had, but to get all worked up over someone so quickly. It confused me. His hurtful comment that I was a slut had really hit me hard. I pursed my lips and stood up, feeling for the light switch. I flipped it on and walked over to my wardrobe. I was going to shower, I didn't need the feel of his hands on me. I paused, tempted to call my occasional partner over. I needed to get him out of my head. Picking up my phone, I sent a text. "Hey, wanna come around tonight? I'll leave my window open." "Sure thing. See you in 10 Kia." "Make that 20, I'm going to shower." "Then leave the window open. I'll be there before then." "Okay," I texted back before putting my phone down and locking the bedroom door. I opened the window slightly and smiled, feeling a little better. That ache that had settled within me would be satiated. 15 minutes later I stepped out of my bathroom, a towel wrapped around me only to see him sitting on my bed, legs crossed, holding my book. "My future stepbrother. Let me guess, you're a Jace fan," he said, smirking. It was clear he had just schemed through and got hold of one name. I frowned slightly. "It's always the male lead, right?" "For your information, yes. Jace is the one I like," I said, walking over to the bed. He put the book down and sat up, tilting his head in concern. "What happened?" he asked softly. "We didn't love each other, nor were we dating, but there was an attraction there and we had somehow agreed to be partners." It all happened when I was 16. We were a little drunk and we almost did it. He had stopped me, but then when we were sober, he had put the idea forward. I told him I didn't want it to affect our friendship. I'm glad to say 2 years on, it hadn't, and we had managed to keep it a secret from Liam and even Raven. It was probably the one thing she didn't know about me. The Alpha King happened, I said, pushing him onto the bed and climbing on top of him. He raised an eyebrow. That old man turned you on? Damon, I said, smacking his chest lightly as I laughed despite myself. He gripped my H.P.S. and raised his eyebrows questioningly. He's kind actually, I admitted. Damon sat up, his smile fading. So don't tell me you're going to fantasize about him while doing me. He pulled my towel open, looking me over appreciatively. Of course not. I said, good. He said, now tugging my head down and claiming my lips in a passionate kiss. He tasted of mint and honey. His hands roamed my body and my own reached for the hem of his t-shirt, pulling it off over his head and tossing it to the ground. You're gorgeous, Kia, he said, softly breaking away from my lips and making his way down my neck and shoulder, leaving a trail of kisses. You're super, he murmured, his darkened eyes were locked on my face as I rode out my high. I dropped back onto the bed breathlessly. He smirked, leaning over and kissing my neck passionately as I got my breath back. I locked my arms around his neck, inhaling his scent. It was comforting. That was pretty good, I said, stretching as he rolled off me. Yeah, he said, looking at my face. What is it? I asked, ruffling my hair. He shook his head. Nothing. You're beautiful. Your mate's going to be lucky, he said with a wink. I smiled. Yours too. I kissed his nose. We had an agreement when our mates came into the picture, this would end. No one would ever need to know, and that was how I planned to keep it. Well, I better head out. That was good. You were dripping tonight, he said, grabbing his jeans. I tossed a pillow at him, blushing lightly. No, I wasn't. Don't deny it. He winked at me before grabbing his stuff and making his way to the window. He looked out, before blowing me a kiss and jumping out the window. I dropped back onto the bed. I sighed. Damon was great, but we were just friends. What I wanted was a mate, someone who wouldn't be able to live without me. Who would consider me their entire world and I would make them mine. Just like Mum and Dad. I got up and stripped the bedsheet. Bundling it aside, I took some fresh covers out and opened the window wider to air the room, then went to take another shower. Alejandro, why? Scarlett asked, frowning. My guess. You. I said, it was the only logical suggestion. Scarlett had abilities a normal wolf didn't. The couple exchanged looks and Elijah pulled Scarlett into his arms. Kissing her neck, he inhaled deeply. I could sense the possessiveness and concern rolling off him as his mate tried to calm him, stroking his arms. I'll be fine, she said softly. That would obviously insinuate that someone was sending them and that they are working with a goal. I said, frowning as I remembered how the Wendigo hadn't attacked Kiara either. Did it hesitate because she perhaps had Scarlett's scent? Or did she have an ability too? So, someone from the shadows? Elijah asked, his arms still wrapped around his mate. There's definitely somewhere these things coming from. Whoever they are, they're smart. I'm still bringing up a blank and I've looked. So that's why I'm here. I will have some warriors sent to help of course, but I want to let the next one come. Find its target. If it goes for Scarlet, we are not using my woman as bait. Elijah growled. Calm down, handsome. It's an idea, and if we can get answers. Scarlet said. I'm beginning to think I should have had her on the council rather than her mate. The guy got so protective when it came to his family. I get that, but I'm not using you as a beacon. I know I can protect the pack and the pups, but I'm not risking you. Elijah said, frowning. I furrowed my brows, looking at the map. Your kids. No special abilities, right? Liam's pretty strong but nothing out of the ordinary. Kiara. No. Elijah said. I didn't miss the concern that flooded his face at the mention of his daughter. Her getting her wolf didn't help her sight. I stated it rather than asked. Scarlet nodded. No, it didn't. She's normal too. She said with a nod. Yeah, there's nothing special about her, but maybe your scent was on her. The Wendigo bit her to injure, not to kill. She would have been in a much worse state if it had gone for the kill. I felt their worry grow palpable, blanketing the room heavily. I didn't have time to care about their worries. I had a goal in mind and I aimed to achieve it. We'll work on a plan, set some traps around the territory, and I'll work with you to see how we can strengthen security if needs be. I said. Elijah nodded. No matter how much ego we both had, when it came to his pack, he wasn't going to let it get in the way. Sounds good. Have something. Scarlet said, motioning to the tray. I glanced at the tray, tiramisu, and brownies. My gaze lingered on the brownies. They had been really good. Probably my favorite thing at the entire dinner. I picked up a piece without bothering with a plate. The smell of chocolate making me remember the woman upstairs. I frowned at the thought. Kiara made the brownies. Scarlet added, smiling as Elijah took one too. Great. What was she? The queen of chocolate? She takes after you with her baking, Elijah replied with a smirk, kissing her. I didn't say anything, trying to push the thoughts away. It was kind of hard to swallow after that, and I picked up one of the coffee mugs, downing it in one. I was not going to eat anything she cooks. It annoyed me that she made those stupid brownies. I put my mug down and left the room without another word. I headed upstairs, pausing when the sounds of moans caught my ears. They were faint and I knew the normal werewolf ears wouldn't be able to hear them. I felt a burning rage of anger consume me when I recognized her voice. I clenched my jaw, my eyes flashing red. Walking to my room, I stepped inside and slammed the door, trying to calm the storm that had filled me. Why did I have an issue anyway? Stupid. I picked up my phone and wireless earpods, turning some music on loud. I lit another cigarette and walked over to the window. Opening it wide, I just stood there, smoking. About 20 minutes later, I saw a man silently drop down from the window next door. He cast a furtive glance around before he walked off. I moved back just as he turned to scan the house. I was right, she was just a slut. I didn't care if he was her boyfriend or whatever. I couldn't stand her. I pulled my shirt off and dropped onto the white bed sheets, staring at the ceiling. I had no idea why it irked me, but it did. A thought came to me and I smirked coldly. Now I was looking forward to tomorrow. The next day I was up before dawn. After going for a run, I showered and left the mansion before the rest were even up. Well, apart from Elijah and Scarlett, seems like they still have every chance they got. Was it a mate thing? I wasn't sure. I doubt one woman alone would ever be able to satisfy me. I was just walking through the pack grounds when I heard footsteps from behind me. Alpha Alejandro. Liam's voice came. I knew from the scent who the second person was. I didn't bother turning around as they caught up with me. The smell of hazelnut chocolate filled my nose. I looked at Liam instead. I'm assuming you're off to train your warriors. I am the head warrior alongside another, but Dad's still alpha for another 10 years or so, he says. So, I just make use of my time to train the warriors where I can. Liam shrugged. Better than wasting your time. With the way things are going, the tougher the training the better. I said quietly. I could see her out of the corner of my eyes. Her hair was pulled up in a high pony and she was dressed in a black sports pants. The tattoo I had seen that night was now on view, and although I was tempted to look, I was not going to give her that satisfaction. Yeah, those creatures are getting more and more common, hey? Liam said, sighing. I heard you were working on some special bullets to attack those things. Any luck? The ones I have managed to capture tend to die fast when not fed. So I don't really get to experiment to see if the bullets work. I said, frowning. Ouch. So, you torture them. Her voice just seemed to resonate within me. I now turned to her, glaring coldly. Do you want me to let them run free and tear you and everyone else apart? Kiara, Liam said, moving her behind his back defensively. She didn't mean it like that. Seems she's lived way too sheltered. I replied. I felt the young alpha's aura. It was strong, but it was nothing compared to mine. Our eyes met and he looked away in submission, his jaw clenching. That satisfied me. I was about to look away when my eyes met those green and blue ones. She frowned at me, not turning away. I glared at her, but I won't lie, it did intrigue me. She didn't have anything special about her. Even her father, the strongest alpha around, couldn't defy my aura. How was she doing it? She refused to look away until my eyes flashed red, and then she was forced to look away. It still irked me though. We reached the training ground and I scanned the crowd. I smirked and cracked my knuckles seeing the pup from last night. Now, this was going to be fun. Kiara, the moment he had that sadistic smirk on his face and cracked his knuckles when he scanned our warriors, I knew he was going to be ruthless. Was it even fair for him to join? All right, everyone. We have the honor of having the Alpha King himself here, Liam said. I didn't say anything. Anyone would know who he was. The power that rolled off him was not one that could be ignored. Despite the fact his appearance distracted me from his power, it was ever present like a darkness around him. The training grounds were separated into sections for different levels and sessions, as well as different training activities. There was target practice for shooting, with a large wall behind it so we didn't end up hitting anyone. Then there were the tracks and the training in wolf form area. We also had weapons practice as well as hand-to-hand. I was the only one who used a staff in human form for both weapon and hand-to-hand training. For hand-to-hand practice, I only used it as a support. Mum had hired the best martial arts werewolf trainer in the country for me and I have forever been grateful to her. When I was little she herself got training from him long before I did, so she could train me as I got older. Then, when I was 14, she hired him to come back to teach me. He spent 28 months here, grilling me day and night in the arts of Krav Maga. My style was different from the rest of our pack, who did mix martial arts, but it helped make up for my ankle. I was brought back to the present when Raven walked over to me, her eyes clearly running over Alejandro. She whispered. Dressed in dark purple pants and a sports bra, she looked as good as ever. I simply gave her a look with my eyes, telling her I kind of agreed. I mean, I don't know if I should tell her what happened last night but I had to admit he was on legs. The thought made me smile. Wasn't that term mainly used for females? I giggled to myself. It's nice to meet you, Alpha. I'm Damon, the future beta. Damon said, holding his hand out. Alejandro simply ignored it and looked him over. Let's see how strong the future beta of this pack is, he remarked. Damon looked surprised and I frowned. What was his problem? Sure, that would actually be an honor. I've heard about your impressive abilities, Damon said, pulling his shirt off. Raven admired him appreciatively and I simply smiled. Damon was perfectly toned, with chiseled abs and a defined V. But when Alejandro pulled his shirt off, it distracted me completely. I now noticed the huge tattoo of a skeletal hooded Grim Reaper, reaping the soul of a wolf spread across his entire back. It had plenty of smaller details that incorporated and linked to the tribal designs around his arms and neck. It was perfect art, not just crude, random tattoos thrown together. I wasn't able to take in each minuscule detail when he turned and tossed his shirt to the ground. His dark eyes met mine and my heart skipped a beat. I looked away, not wanting to hold his piercing glare. All right everyone, pair up, Liam said. Kiara, you're with me. I raised an eyebrow. I never sparred with Liam during official training. I simply nodded, not questioning him as Raven shot him a dirty look for not letting us pair up. I walked over to the bench and picked up the staff and blindfold. That was another thing I learned, to fight whilst my eyes were closed. So, when I was in the dark, I was able to rely on my other senses. Ready? He asked me as everyone began warming up and those who already had warmed up, began spreading out to spar. Although many were glancing towards Damon and Alejandro, who were about to start up. After doing a few stretches, my eyes focused on Alejandro and Damon. I stood up. Alejandro was going easy on him, that much was obvious, but at the same time he wasn't dealing light hits. I could already smell blood in the air and I winced as Damon staggered back. Kia, come on, Liam said sympathetically, knowing Raven and I were getting a little worried about seeing Damon getting hurt. Although he was an excellent fighter, it was clear he was barely blocking Alejandro's brutal attacks. I frowned and covered my eyes with my blindfold. "All right, let's go," Liam's voice said. I took a deep breath. With my eyes no longer in use, the rest of my senses were heightened. I heard a change in Liam's breathing before he lunged at me. Using my simple 5-foot staff, I spun around kicking him. He blocked it and I flipped back, crouching down. I began using my stick to block as I spun around, aiming a front kick by bringing my knee up. I heard a grunt and knew I had connected with his side, but it didn't last for long when he grabbed my knee and tossed me aside. I lost my balance but hit the floor, using my hands to brace myself, and rolled over. I blocked with my staff and aimed another kick. I couldn't hear him now and I knew I needed to calm my own heart so I could hear him better. I was about to get up when I threw myself to the side just as I felt a heavy punch hit the ground. A breathless chuckle left Liam's lips. "Smart move, Kia," he said. I smiled. "Oh, I have plenty of them, brother dear," I teased. I stepped back, my nose telling me where he was. Okay, this one was a bit of a hit and miss. It was something I was working on, but with my ankle, I knew it may not have the pivoting force I needed. Clearing the space before me, I ran towards him. At the last minute, I used my staff to give me leverage and I flipped over in the air, raising my fist to punch Liam. He moved to the left and I let myself fall to the ground. My ankle sent a jarring spasm of pain through me and I fell to my knees, but I didn't let it slow me down as I punched out, praying I connected with Liam. I smiled when my fist connected, however, my smile vanished when I realized I had just punched him straight in the balls. He gr0aned, staggering back and I heard a few snickers and gasps. I pulled the blindfold off, my eyes wide as I saw my brother clutching his front, in clear pain. I clasped my hand to my mouth but I was not able to hold back the giggle that escaped my lips. Oh oopsie. Alejandro, this was fun. He was good, but not good enough. With each hit, I went faster. He was trained well, probably up to par with my top warriors, but nowhere near as good as me. I had just elbowed him in the neck, when my eyes fell on Kiara. She was sparring with her brother, blindfolded. I blocked the beta's attacks, my eyes on her. If I thought she let her side or ankle hold her back, I was wrong, way wrong. She moved like an assassin and I had to admit it. Was it weird that I was checking out a girl who was barely legal? This was wrong. An image of her clad in lingerie and wrapped around a pole entered my mind and I dragged my eyes away. I needed a distraction from her. I focused on the man in front of me, a little bored with the fight now. With a few punches, I knocked him to the ground before twisting his arm behind his back about to break it when I heard a gr0an and a giggle. I let go of the beta and turned to see Kiara on her knees, her brother staggering back holding his package. Oh oopsie, she said breathlessly. I raised an eyebrow as Damon staggered to his feet. Great fight, Alpha, he said. I didn't reply. If only he realized, I would have broken his bones if it wasn't for her laugh. She got up, rushing forward about to reach for her brother before she burst into laughter again. Her voice seemed to resonate in my head and I turned away. Alpha, you okay? Someone asked Liam. The small girl ran over to him, patting his back. Kia, really? Damon asked, raising his eyebrows in amusement. In my defense, I couldn't see. She said, standing up. I saw her use the staff to balance. It was clear she wasn't putting weight on her ankle either. Did it hurt? Why did I care? I was about to turn away when the other girl ran over to me. Damon, what has he done to you? Who hurt you, big boy, that you had to take your anger out on my friend? She asked me, facing me with her hands on her hips. I raised my eyebrows. Was she for real? What was she for, feet? Shouldn't you be with the pups over there? I asked, motioning to the far ground where preteens were training. That earned me a glare from the punk or goth or whatever she was meant to be. Excuse me, I'm almost 18. She huffed. I glanced her over. Can't tell. That seemed to trigger her off, but before she could say anything else, Damon put his hand on her shoulder, pulling her back. It's fine, Raven. We were training, he said. He gave her shoulder a gentle squeeze. I raised my eyebrow. He and Kiara didn't even seem to be close. I mean, they didn't even seem to spare each other a second glance. Were they dating secretly? Why did I care? I want to fight him, Raven said suddenly. Liam and Kiara now both turned to her, surprise clear on their faces. I'll snap you in half before you even realize. What do you think? Can you last 2 minutes against me? 2 against 1, Kiara said, stepping forward. I looked into her eyes, the confidence and defiance were clear in them. I ran my hand through my hair, not missing Kiara's eyes run over my arm. 2 misfits, I said, then looked at Liam, who looked worried. Smart. Give me the blindfold. You use your full abilities and I'll give you 2 an advantage. If you last even 1 minute, I'll be impressed. Go easy on them, Liam said. My eyes flashed. I didn't take orders from anyone. I gave him a murderous glare before taking the blindfold from Kiara, trying not to notice her scent that lingered on it. Don't tell me what to do, I said to Liam, now turning my eyes on the small girl. Kiara frowned at me, but I didn't bother looking at her. She was distracting enough in that top. I think he's using a blindfold, so he doesn't get distracted by our bodies, Raven whispered to Kiara. If you have anything to show. You forget, neither of you are my type, and way too young. I said icily. Kiara was hot, but I wasn't going to admit that. No way. I just needed to know what it was about her. I focused on the fight at hand, if you could even call it that. I wasn't going to snap their heads for annoying me off, but I was going to make sure they learned their lesson. Tying the band over my eyes, I crossed my arms. Come at me with everything you have, because you only get 1 chance. I let my aura roll off me a little, giving them a warning. If they hesitated, they'd be dead. 3-2. I sensed their heart rates accelerating. Raven lunged first, as I predicted. Grabbing the tiny brat by her head, I held her at arm's length. She growled, but without her wolf it just sounded like a cat. Kiara, on the other hand, was calmer. I could sense her pacing around me. The moment I heard her heart quicken, I turned swiftly, blocking her attack. The smell of hazelnut chocolate filled my senses and I grabbed her by the neck, just as her fist connected to my jaw. The nymph. One hit in, she said smugly. I frowned and dropped the brat first. Pulling off my blindfold, I looked at Kiara. My hand was still around her slender throat, I actually liked it there. To know she was at my mercy felt good, but the look on her face didn't match. She just looked triumphant, as if that punch satisfied her. You win, Alpha, Damon said, looking concerned as he helped Raven up. My mood darkened as I looked at him. He knew what I was capable of. I let go of Kiara as Damon came over and placed a hand on her shoulder. I gave her a cold smirk. Seems like your boyfriend is scared. I'll hurt you, I said coldly. She frowned. He's not my boyfriend, she said, massaging her throat. I could see the marks I had left on her perfect skin. My mistake. Your partner then? I said venomously, having no idea why she irritated me so much. She paled, and so did Damon as all eyes turned on them. My eyebrow went up as Liam looked between Damon and Kiara. Both their faces gave it away, but it seemed their dirt wasn't public knowledge. My bad, I guess. Kiara, Liam said. I could sense the anger building, his alpha aura rolling off him in waves. I took out a cigarette and a lighter from my pocket. I was done with this. I cast one last look at her. Her heart was thudding, but she was still looking at me with pure anger on her face, ignoring her brother. Her eyes were now a vibrant purple. I just lit my fag and walked off. The last thing I heard was Liam asking what did he mean, guys.